People only respected me when they thought I had money. That was the lesson life kept trying to teach me, and honestly, I hated it. 3 years ago, I was standing behind the counter of a tiny neighborhood bookstore, scanning used novels for minimum wage while customers rushed past me without making eye contact. Some smiled politely, most didn't even notice me. But I loved that little store. I loved the smell of old pages, the quiet afternoons, the elderly customers who came just to talk because they were lonely. The job wasn't glamorous, but it felt peaceful in a world that constantly demanded performance. Still, my family treated it like a public embarrassment, especially my older sister, Vanessa. Vanessa measured human value by cars, watches, and restaurant reservations. She married a real estate broker, lived in a massive glass house outside the city, and posted motivational quotes online as if success had made her wise. Every family gathering turned into a performance. "So," she'd ask loudly at dinner, pretending innocence, "still working at the little bookstore?" I'd smile tightly. "Yes." She'd exchange looks with her husband, Tyler. "That's cute," he'd say. Cute. I was 28 years old, paying my own rent, working honestly, and somehow my life was reduced to one word: cute. At first, I tried to ignore it, but little comments slowly become heavy when you hear them for years. My parents weren't much better. "You're smart," my mother often sighed. "You're wasting your potential." My father once told me, "No serious man wants a woman without ambition." That one stayed with me for months. What none of them understood was that the bookstore was never my real income, because the bookstore was never my real income, and that secret changed everything. But before that happened, there was one night I'll never forget. Vanessa hosted a huge anniversary dinner at her house. Luxury cars lined the driveway, servers carried trays of expensive food I couldn't pronounce, every guest wore designer clothes and talked about investments, vacation homes, and business deals. I arrived in a simple black dress from a department store. Vanessa looked me up and down before hugging me. "You came straight from work?" she whispered. "No, why?" "Oh," she smiled. "You just look tired." I felt my stomach tighten. Inside the dining room, people talked over me constantly. Whenever someone asked what I did, the energy shifted the second I answered. "A bookstore?" one woman repeated. "Wow, that still exists?" Everyone laughed softly. I laughed too. That's the strange thing about humiliation. Sometimes you join it just to survive it. Later that night, I walked onto the balcony to breathe. The city lights blurred beneath my tears. Then I heard voices inside. Vanessa, Tyler, and my parents. "She has no direction," Vanessa said casually. "Honestly, I think she's just afraid to compete." My mother sighed. "We worry about her future." Tyler laughed quietly. "At least she's harmless." Harmless. Like I was small, forgettable, like my entire existence was something people tolerated politely. But what they didn't know that night was that the small bookstore girl they mocked had been quietly building something none of them ever imagined, and very soon they were all going to find out. I didn't become successful overnight. That's the part people never see. 5 years ago, while working at the bookstore during the day, I started writing romance and mystery stories online at night. At first, nobody read them, except a few strangers who left encouraging comments, but I kept going. Every night after work, I sat in my tiny apartment with cheap coffee and an old laptop, writing until sunrise sometimes. The stories came from pain, from loneliness, from watching people pretend to love each other while secretly competing. Slowly, my audience grew. 1,000 readers became 10,000. 10,000 became hundreds of thousands. Then publishers started emailing me. I ignored them at first because I was terrified, but eventually I signed a deal under a pen name nobody knew, not even my family, especially not my family, because for once in my life, I wanted something that belonged to only me. And suddenly, everything changed. My books exploded online. Audiobook deals, foreign translations, streaming interest, money I never imagined. But I stayed at the bookstore. People thought it was strange, but that store had loved me when nobody else respected me. I couldn't abandon it just because success arrived. Besides, staying there protected my peace. Nobody treated me differently. At least, not yet. Then came the interview. One of my novels was selected for a major national book award, and the publishing company begged me to attend the live event. "You can't hide forever," my editor laughed. I almost declined, until I saw Vanessa's newest social media post, a photo from her luxury kitchen captioned, "Hard work always separates leaders from people who settle." Talons of likes. Something inside me cracked quietly. Not from jealousy, from exhaustion. I was tired of shrinking myself so other people could feel taller, so I agreed to the interview. The award ceremony happened 2 weeks later. I wore a deep blue gown and walked onto a stage brighter than anything I had ever seen. Cameras flashed everywhere. My hands trembled as the host smiled at me. "So," he said warmly, "millions of readers want to know the woman behind these best-selling novels." Millions. Even hearing the word felt unreal. The interview aired nationally that night, and my family watched every second. Vanessa called me 37 times before midnight. I didn't answer. Then my mother texted, "Why didn't you tell us?" I stared at the message for a long time. Because suddenly they cared. Suddenly my little bookstore job wasn't embarrassing anymore. The next morning, my father showed up at the bookstore unexpectedly. Customers recognized me from television and whispered excitedly while he stood there smiling proudly like he had built my success himself. "You made us look foolish," he said softly. I almost laughed. "No," I replied calmly, "you did that yourselves." But the betrayal wasn't over yet, because a week later, Vanessa posted photos online claiming she had supported my writing journey from the beginning. Supported me? She barely respected my existence. Then she contacted reporters trying to arrange interviews about growing up beside a famous author. That hurt more than the insults ever did, because they didn't just ignore me when I was small, they wanted ownership once I became valuable, and that was the moment I stopped feeling guilty for protecting my peace. A month later, my publisher organized a massive celebration party for the release of my newest book. Media, influencers, journalists, everyone was there, and somehow Vanessa managed to get invited. Of course she did. She arrived wearing a glittering silver dress and the confident smile she always used when cameras appeared nearby. The second reporters noticed her, she slipped into performance mode. "My sister and I have always been incredibly close," she said dramatically. I stood across the room listening quietly. Then came the sentence that changed everything. "I always knew she would succeed," Vanessa continued. "I pushed her to believe in herself." That lie hit me differently, because I remembered every humiliating dinner, every mocking comment, every moment they treated me like I was less than you. And suddenly I realized something important. Silence protects people who hurt you. So for the first time publicly, I told the truth. During my speech later that night, I stood beneath soft golden lights holding the microphone with shaking hands. "I want to thank the people who supported me," I began. Vanessa smiled instantly, but then I continued. "And, strangely, I also want to thank the people who doubted me." The room grew quiet. Because sometimes rejection becomes fuel. Sometimes being underestimated becomes freedom. Vanessa's smile faded. I looked directly toward her. There were years when people mocked my small job, without realizing I was secretly building the life they said I'd never have. No shouting, no cruelty, just truth. And somehow, truth always lands heavier. The room stayed silent for a moment, before applause slowly filled the space. Real applause, not polite, not fake. After the event, Vanessa cornered me backstage. "You embarrassed me," she whispered angrily. I looked at her calmly. "You embarrassed yourself every time you treated me like I was less than you." For once, she had nothing to say. That was the last serious conversation we ever had. Distance entered our relationship after that. Not dramatic distance, quiet distance. The kind built when someone realizes they can no longer control your self-worth. As for me, I kept writing. I still visited the bookstore every week. Sometimes I even worked behind the counter for fun during busy weekends. And honestly, those became my happiest moments. Because success means very little if you lose yourself trying to prove something to people who never planned to understand you. The biggest lesson I learned wasn't about revenge. It was about value. People will judge your chapter 1 while secretly struggling in their chapter 20. They will laugh at small beginnings because they cannot imagine hidden potential. But growth does not need applause to exist. Some of the strongest things in life grow quietly until the world suddenly notices them all at once.